All good. Okay then. Thank you. Tonight we have a very special guest speaker, Jim Burrowes. I've got a very short doc over here, which I will use. I'll read out just to introduce Jim, and then I'll leave it in your hands, Jim. Okay. Jim Burrowes OAM presented for the Service of Life Saving Victoria in 1990 to 1998. Jim is 98 of Blackburn South. Believes he's the last of his kind, the last Coastwatcher left of the Allied Intelligence Bureau's M Special Unit. 1943 to 45, James was among a network of Allied military intelligence operatives stationed in remote Pacific Islands, close to and behind enemy lines, to observe enemy movement and rescue stranded Allied personnel. They were there to watch and report, not to engage the enemy. The intelligence they gathered has been often credited with playing a significant role in the Allies' prosecution of the Pacific War, with their radical reports giving the Allies a significant advantage in some of the most crucial battles. Welcome, Jim, and we'll leave it in your hands now, mate.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. You've given a little bit of the story of mine, but I'll start from scratch. As you say, my name is Jim Burrowes, and I'd like to just spend a short time telling you how I became a Coastwatcher. I was born in Pickle Street, Port Melbourne, with a family of 7, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and things were tough coming through the depression, etc., but eventually along came September the 3rd, 1939, when war broke out in Europe, and soon after the Robert and Tom, my 2 brothers, had been in the militia and the Air Force, and they were already in the services. When I became 18, and later on when I was 18, I joined the army. I couldn't get in quick enough with the 2 brothers already in, and that's how I started. And because I had worked in an office of chartered accountants, they with other people who were teachers, they must have thought we had more brains or something. I don't know, but we were made radio operators, and the rest were made in the infantry. But that was a start, which I didn't know at the time, of how I became a Coastwatcher, because the first 6 weeks we marched into university in town, and to learn Morse code. After that, I joined the land headquarters, and we were based in Ringwood, and we had the only contact with the army up in Port Moresby, which when was president then for about a year. After that, as ladies came up in the army to relieve our position, we were moved north, and in the situation there, they called for 6 radio operators to join a special unit, which would be very secretive and dangerous. I couldn't put up my hand quick enough to, with my 2 brothers already in the war, quick enough, and we found ourselves training with some Americans in Cairns, from when we went up in a landing craft infantry to Ferguson Island. From there, I spent probably 6 to 7 months moving around the islands in a USPT boat to land at various islands, etc., to suss out the presence or otherwise of Japanese, and most importantly, to find out how the natives were, whether they were still friendly through fear with the Japanese. After that time, for some reason, they disbanded and I became a Coastwatcher. So I then spent 2.5 years with them. Way back in 1939, Admiral Eric Felt had set up the Coastwatchers with locals, expats, field assistants and operators locally, but they were pretty dormant for 2 years until the Japs came down to invade successfully Rabaul. Rabaul was a story in its own, and I've told a lot of the details that in my website, which hopefully you'll have access to from Eric. But it was during that period that I spent time at the base camps in Nadzab, Madang and New Britain, and then by barge at night I travelled up into the Gazelle Peninsula, where I met I caught up with a captain and a lieutenant, and for 10 months, which was in Japanese-held territory, and to monitor movements of the aircraft from the airstrip. Actually, we were about the only 3 Aussies that saw Rabaul from the land. But incidentally, whilst I'll be talking about the Coastwatchers, I certainly pay homage from all you guys. The Coastwatchers had a strict mandate not to confront the enemy. In other words, do your job of spying on the Japanese movements, and if you're caught, which of the 400 Coastwatchers, about 38, that's 10%, were caught, tortured, and killed. In fact, one was beheaded. So dramatically, they were unable to carry out their job. So our strict mandate was to not get caught. In that respect, I was comparing them with a few of you guys that were in Vietnam who went through hell and high water, but whilst that wasn't a job for the Coastwatchers, nevertheless, and I'll talk to that from probably an hour, I just wanted to not prove, but let everybody know how the Coastwatchers as a unit turned the tide of the Pacific War, of the South Pacific. So with that in mind, I just leave the family bit, except the 2 brothers. Robert, the eldest, had been in the engineers down at Point Nepean, and had travelled up in 1941, that's 6 months before Pearl Harbor, to join the contingent, the Lark Force contingent, and unfortunately they were captured, and 1,053 of them were put into a Montevideo Maru prison ship, and which sailed through to China, but off yeah, off Luzon, an American submarine, because it was an unmarked ship, torpedoed them, and the 1,053, including my brother, were drowned. In 1943, that was in 1942, July 1. In 1943, unfortunately, Tom, who was in the Air Force as a wireless air gunner, flying in the they were called Beaufort bombers. They were called flying coffins, but 5 of them on their first flight out over Rebel never returned. So I'd lost my 2 brothers, Tom being the Air Force one, and incidentally, when I was born in Pickle Street, Port Melbourne, Tom just preceded me, so he was my twin brother, and I was the second one there. So that was tough. We didn't know about those results till very late in the war, and very tough on the mother who had brought us up with a lot of difficulty during the war. Now, getting back to the Coastwatchers, I wanted to really, in fact, my last mission, and this is why I'm happy to do talks to people of interest like yourself, that the Coastwatchers were part of what was called M Special Unit of the Allied Intelligence Bureau, and Z Special Unit with the sabotage, M being the Coastwatchers. A lot of publicity for the Z guys who bombed ships, etc., in Singapore, but there's no damage done as far as the war is concerned there. But the Coastwatchers, under the auspices of General Doug MacArthur and the other allies, played such an important part in repulsing the Japanese. The Japanese, leading in 5,000 people with Rebel, had actually chased around looking for prisoners who had escaped. 150 of them massacred at Toll, and they went across to New Guinea in Milne Bay looking for other victories. And they wasted 2 times, but 2 months later, that's in May the 8th, the Japs had landed in January the 23rd, which incidentally was just exactly a week after I joined the army. And that's right. They sent the flotilla down to on the way to Port Moresby. Now, they were spotted by 2 Coastwatchers in the Solomon Islands, some of the islands there. Bougainville was one of them, I think. And that was reported back to Townsville, when, bearing in mind that this is now 6 months after Pearl Harbor. It's amazing how the American warships had patched themselves up and are now relocated in the Australian waters, with 5 of them and 2 Australian ships then sailed out and belted, a bit of what's my language now, belted them, whatever, out of the Japanese in the Battle of the Coral Sea. This became the first major defeat by the Japanese, bearing in mind they'd come from Japan down to China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the islands. So this was the first repulse, because the Japanese fleet had to turn around and go back to Rebel, beaten. Now, if they'd continued on, they would have literally marched into Port Moresby, just as they did in Rabaul, and the ramifications were just unreal to think. They would have had the land base, of course, to bomb the hell out of the towns in Rabaul. There was early talk by the Japanese of invading Australia, because Port Melbourne was literally the front door to it. So that repulse at Coral Sea was very significant. Later, of course, history will tell you that in the latter months of 1942, the raw young troops of the Aussies were sent up the Kokoda Trail, and there ensued vicious stories and fighting for about 6 months, when once again the Japanese, I won't use the word repulse there so much, but they finally ran out of supplies and recruits and food, and in fact there's even history of cannibalism, and they were beaten too. So the Japanese were also beaten at Rabaul, at Kokoda. When the Japanese retreated to the beachheads of Buna and Gona, which was a terrible mistake by Douglas MacArthur, because arising from that, I think the Japanese themselves lost another 12,000 killed and injured, and of course there were many thousands of Aussies and Americans, which was a useless war because it was all over. The main value of the Coastwatchers now that were included in Guadalcanal were the ability of the Aussie Coastwatchers to warn ships and not so much ships, but air flights, just as we were from Rabaul, with messages, 60 Betty bombers on the way, bombing 10,000 feet roughly, so that when the bombing fleets arrived at Guadalcanal, the ships were on general quarters ready for them. The military was on the ground ready also, but mainly the air planes were up in the air in the sun ready to swoop. So they belted the hell out of the bombers arriving, and had much success, and including the Americans beating them once again. So much so that Admiral Halsey of the US issued the famous comment, you may have heard it, that the Coastwatchers saved Guadalcanal and Guadalcanal saved the Pacific War. That was a fantastic operation, because it turned the tide. It ensured the contact of the US into supplies and resources into Australia, which they wouldn't have had, and then so the Battle of Guadalcanal was won too. There's much credit given by Weary Dunlop about them saving Port Moresby, and General MacArthur also had in to the success at Guadalcanal. Just going back a little bit, the Coastwatchers were made of a party of the expats that Eric Felt had recouped or got going in 1939. The other components were a radio operator, of which I was one, a series of natives, the Indigenes, who without either of those components, there wouldn't have been any Coastwatchers. The natives were just marvellous. They weren't the same as the Fuzzy Wuzzies. They were trained troops, and they obviously did all the work for us in the camp, knocking up huts with their fronds from the trees and running up the coconut tree for an aerial from a radio. And here's my radio thingo that I pinched when I came home, that I used for Morse code. So it was, and also because 253 Commando Association of independent companies had also joined the Lark Force, and they were very competitive and combative compared to the other Lark Force who were only defensive. But because all the officers, when the Japs had captured Rabaul, had all been taken off on a different ship to Japan, and whilst they had a bit of a rough time, they all came home safely. But it left all the poor Aussies soldiers with absolutely no leadership, no protection, no help at all, and it. But during that period of exodus and escape, it was the Coastwatchers came into play very much in the saving area, because they actually, between two boats, the Lorabada and the Lakatoi, from one from the north and one from the south, New Britain, collected and saved 336 escapees and brought them back to Port Moresby, or the other lot came back to Cairns. The ones that arrived back in Cairns, absolutely skin and bones, and only about 10% of them ever got back to interaction because of the physical condition. But they received very unfairly, very anti stuff like, your deserters and heaven knows what. They never knew the agonies and the trials and tribulations of the escapees. So that was quite unfair. But the Coastwatchers had saved a wonderful stack of them there to help. I think I had 10 months on a personal note. I had 10 months with Japanese territory. Fortunately, the lazy, I don't know, 100,000 of the lazy buggers were down in the Rabaul area, not roaming around, because they could have had a radio detection, or when our food was dropped on a regular, probably every couple of months, by Catalinas or liberators, mostly full of food, because we had the natives to feed as well. But how they never found us is a bit of a mystery. But we were camped on a ridge, so that at each end we had natives, sentries, 2 or 3, so that if there's no way the Nips could come up the side of the mountain, which were precipitous. But if they did come along, we'd have warning of trouble ahead. I was lucky because whilst I was a band of three brothers that all had the destiny of rebel, I'm the only one came home, and it's after 98 now, and Beryl's 97. She's only a chicken. She'll catch up in 3 months or so. So as I said before, my mission now is to let all the Aussies and all the world. We get in the website. I'm getting roughly 30 or 40 clicks on it from all over the world. I get messages back from Scotland, England, USA. Hi Jim, we were on the sea there, Liberator that picked some of you guys up, etc. I did have a lucky escape. A lot of luck in war is how you finish up, but I was chosen on a party to go into Hollandia by submarine to suss out the situation with Japanese attendants and particularly the natives. Unfortunately, they hadn't allowed for the surf, so that the 2 rubber boats that went ashore. Oh, sorry, I was on this party, but at the last minute, another guy who had been selected beforehand, who'd picked up or had the flu, got better, and at the very last minute, literally the last day, he was put back into his spot in my place. Getting back to the landing, the first rubber boat gummy went under and lost a lot of equipment, etc. And then the second one, thinking and the ship thinking that they saw a light to come, the same thing happened to them, and they were then put down by some natives who were under the Japanese regime, and the Japanese attacked them and killed half of them, including Jack Bunning, which would have been me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been here to tell the story. So that was just a matter of luck. I think time must be running out, so I might finish on that note, so that if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jim.
And so I got out in December 45 and resumed work at the Chartered Accountant's Office, but that's another story.
Okay, thanks.
So, any questions?
Yeah, Jim, what I'd like to do, I'd like to share these photos, and you just quickly talk to a couple of those as we go through. You'll see them when they come up.
That'll be nice, yeah.
Okay, right.
I can see Rotary Club.
Yeah, here we go. This is who we're looking for, right? Okay, hang on.
Oh, there we are, yes. Oh, there you are, that's...
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want...
that's Tom and Bob, as you can imagine. Somehow in some leave somewhere we met up. And Tom was a good-looking bloke. I wasn't. Okay. But anyway. Yeah. That's the latest.
Yeah, that's you and you.
That's me when I'm 18 or 19, yeah. And then about 95 or something like that.
Okay, so that one.
And on the left down the bottom, there's a shot of the camp. Oh no, you wouldn't see that.
Yeah. So there's you and your wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was taken by the DVA for the war records.
Okay.
Number 2, yeah.
So that's where you were.
Yeah, number 3. That's the where we were in Rebel in the top right-hand corner, and down the southeast to down to Booker, Bougainville, and Guadalcanal.
Okay.
And the next one is a shot of one of the. I'm not sure whether that's our camp, but those natives were absolutely marvellous. As I said, literally without them, we wouldn't have been able to exist. And down there's one of the radio operators at one of the bases. Yeah. That was number 5. Yeah. Can we slip down to any further, Eric?
Yeah. You've got.
Or was that it?
We got. What?
So we can only see slide 1 showing
Okay.
on the screen share.
All right. Well, look, I think we'll leave it there. I'll hand back to Chairman Ron. We might have some questions. Jim, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Rod.
Okay, Ron.
Okay, there, Jim. I'll see if I can find a few people to ask some questions. Anyone got any questions? Hands up.
Hi, Rod.
How we going, mate?
Uh,
There's no question. You've covered the subject too well, Jim. So what I'll do, I'd just like to thank you very much for coming along, for being with us tonight on this very special occasion. You're a very interesting man to listen to. You can sit there and listen to you for hours. For a man of 98 to be like you are, it's fantastic. Bill, Jim, sorry. I will say that I have got a father-in-law who is 101, and he's the sole survivor of the original vampire. So he's in the same category as you are, and you can sit with him and you can just sit for hours and hours, and his memory just takes you right through all these experiences, right through the war, right through the Mediterranean. So I've had a bit of an insight to what you've done and where you've been, but it's been absolutely fantastic to be able to listen to you, Jim, and I'm sure everyone else here feels the same. There's just one question I'd like to ask though. Being in the service myself, you said at the beginning, the first thing you did was you shot up your hand to volunteer. I thought the first thing you did was not volunteer. First thing we were told when we got into the service is you don't volunteer for everything.
There's a question there, Rod.
It's not a done thing when you're in the services.
Why did you volunteer?
I volunteered because the 2 brothers were already in and couldn't get in quick enough. Because at the end of the time there, when they called for six volunteers for this special dangerous secretive job, as distinct from the old adage in the army, you never volunteer for anything. I couldn't put my hand up quick enough because, and let's face it, we were young and adventuresome. It was high adventure. We never worried about anything that's going to happen. I've got the old theory that life is all tickety-boo for yourself. Nothing's going to happen to me unless it does, of course, and then you're in trouble. But the main thing is my 2 brothers were up there and I wanted to join them. I never met them because they're dead.
Well done. All right.
Well done, Jim. And certainly Lady Luck was on your side, so, and it's continued to be on your side because at 98 you're still looking quite healthy. You've got plenty of memories there, and all the very best to you, and all the very best to you for Sunday on the ANZAC Day. I'm sure you'll celebrate in some way. But yeah, so what I will do now is I will now ask the President to come up and make an award. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Jim.
Kind words, Rob.
May I call you Jim?
Yeah.
Yes. Jim, we are enriched and privileged to hear your story. You spoke without notes, and your recollections are real and frightening. Your courage and humility are inspiring, and we tonight walked taller because of you and our own returned servicemen. Thank you. I'd like to present you now with a certificate.
I'd consider it an honour if I could say the ode on your behalf.
Oh, here's
Eric?
the certificate.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, isn't that lovely? Oh, can I have a hard copy of that sometime?
Email it to you.
That's so lovely.
So you can appreciate it. I thank you very much indeed, and I'll hand you back to Chairman Ron. Thanks, Ron.
That's lovely, Eric. And gang, I really appreciate that.
Okay, Jim, we're going to go into our ANZAC part of the meeting now, okay? So hang in, all right?
Yes.
Okay then.
Can I say the ode?
We'll now start the...
Can I say the ode?
Jim's asking if he can say the ode. Well, yeah, when we get to that, when Ronnie's ready.
Yep.
Yes, you can when we're ready, okay? We'll call you in.
Thank you, Neil.
Not yet.
I'll leave it to you, yep.
Okay then. First up, we've got the ANZAC Requiem, which will be read by past President Eric.
Thanks, Ronnie. On this day, above all days, we remember those Australian men and women who died or suffered in the great tragedy of war. On the morning of April 25th, 1915, Australian and New Zealand troops landed under fire at Gallipoli. And it was then and in the violent campaign which followed that the ANZAC tradition was forged. The elements of that tradition have inspired and offered an enduring example to later generations of Australians. Each year we pay homage not only to those original ANZACs, but to all who died or were disabled in their service to this country. They enrich our nation's history. Their hope was for the freedom of mankind, and remember with pride their courage, their compassion and their comradeship. They served on land and sea and in the air in many places throughout the world. Not only do we honour the memory of those Australians who have fallen in battle, we share the sorrow of those who have mourned them and all who have been the victims of armed conflict. On this day, we remember with sympathy those Australians who have suffered as prisoners of war and those who, because of war, have their lives shortened or handicapped. We recall staunch friends and allies, and especially those of the first ANZAC Day. May we and our successors prove worthy for their sacrifice.
Thank you, Eric. Now, Jim's just put in a request for us. He'd like to read the ode. So what I'll do, I would get everyone up standing for Jim to read the ode. And once the ode is finished, could you please remain standing for the last post. Thank you.
They shall not, ready? They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. at the going down of the sun, and we will remember them lest we forget.
Thank you. Would you please remain
Tom.
silent? Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Neil. Well done, mate. Okay. Getting near the end of the meeting. Next week's meeting will be a Zoom meeting, which includes a 7 p.m. raffle draw, then followed by a board meeting in pods north and south.